Welcome, everybody, to episode 3 of the Third Pint Theory with your hosts, myself, Michael Donaldson, and
Martin Bridges.
Yes, the beer bigwig himself. And we're deep into winter, and which is always an interesting time because it is dark beer season. Whatever dark beer means to you, whether it's stout, porter, maybe a dark lager, doppelbock, of course, always popular. But the seasonality of beer is probably a reasonably recent thing in New Zealand. Do you think, Martin?
I think so. And I think it changes. You know, I think
Yes.
we're kind of getting new traditions and new seasonality. I think that there are some. I think that, you know, dark beers in the winter. Although I'll happily drink dark beers any time of the year, but you know, I know that Garage Project have just launched a whole heap of dark beers, including a coffee banana imperial stout, which sounds very wrong, but also can be very right.
Sounds really good. Sounds great.
So,
But of course, we have this year in particular, we had 2 goes at dark beer season because for the first time around St. Patrick's Day, we really saw New Zealand breweries like jumping on the back of that Guinness phenomena. Garage Project brought forward the release of the Snug. Emerson's did Wild Rover.
that was a really good beer.
Really good beer. There were a couple of others, and it was like trading off the back of that, you know, phenomenal Guinness surge in popularity over the last few years. But we're now in dark beer season, take 2.
Yeah.
And then I love it.
Oh, I do as well. And then we'll kind of roll once we start. We'll kind of get through winter, and then as we kind of roll into spring, I think we get that flush of lagers around October. People jumping on the Oktoberfest.
And that's another relatively recent trend in New Zealand, which a great one because lagers deserve their moment, and for us in springtime in New Zealand, it's a perfect time, really.
Yeah. I think it works really well, and that then kind of leads into the summer, and probably we see a bunch of those lagers continue. That we sometimes get I think more of a pilsner. Kind of a sort of more of a pilsner style coming through into summer, and then as we move into autumn, it's fresh hops.
And I got to say, fresh hop season this year seemed to last well into winter. I've still got some in my fridge, and you know, it's well into winter.
I think it's been really interesting. Hey, and we might talk about that in another episode sometime. But I thought a couple of years ago that we kind of hit peak fresh hop. But I was completely and utterly wrong. Never listen to any of my beer predictions in esteemed publications like The Pursuit of Happiness, because I always get it wrong. But
yes, we all do.
the fresh hops seem to be going from strength to strength. We seem to be getting more and more every year. So I think I kind of go, you know, it's fresh hops. There's the kind of initial, the St. Patrick's Day linked dark beer, and then the big kind of dark beers.
Do you think, Martin, there is maybe, we'll call it a 5th season, potentially silly season, I don't know, around Beervana? Does that have because Biavana is still about the festival beers to an extent, and it used to be quite strongly festival beer focused. And I can remember back, I'm trying to think now, maybe Garage Project had that carrot cake beer. I'm thinking 12 years ago or something like that.
They had the one with the red hot poker.
Oh, the red hot poker,
shoved in the glass, which I thought was always somewhat dangerous with a plastic glass.
Yeah, and the traffic light stuff. They've been very good on those festival beers and theming their stand. But other breweries produce special beers for Biavana still. While there's not that emphasis on a festival beer per se. Which brings us to the actual point of the matter.
Yeah.
That's a very long-winded way into this story, people. On Urbanaut, and a few years ago, they came to Biavana wanting to make a bit of a Biavana-ish statement, Biavana-esque, with a Toasted Marshmallow hazy IPA. And on first reading, those two things don't even go together, do they? Toasted Marshmallow and IPA. They don't. Shouldn't work. But it worked phenomenally for them. It was, I remember that Biavana, and it's fair to say it was probably one of the talking points of the whole festival. There's always a beer that kind of captures people's imagination. And as a result, it's become a core range beer in the Urbanaut lineup.
Who would have thought? And I agree. I think there's a long tradition at Biavana of the kind of the stunt beers, the statement beers, and they do make their way out into kind of the general market for a while, but it is very much a blip. It is that seasonality.
It is.
It's the here's the beers that we the crazy beers that we released at Biavana, and people buy them and then they're gone. As you say, Toasted Marshmallow hazy, it's core range now for and that's why I was really interested to have this conversation with Bruce to say how and why. And I think people will enjoy the conversation we had.
I don't think we've actually. So it's with Bruce Turner, founder of Urbanaut. As he tells us in the interview, still head brewer. He kept that title. He was very strong on that. But one of the things that was very evident throughout that interview is a couple of things: how much they rely on their taproom clientele and their staff to keep coming up with a lot of the crazy ideas that they come up with. And secondly, how prepared they are to just change all the time, and to that extent, there's a lot of interesting revelations in this chat with Bruce. It's quite newsy, I think.
Absolutely. There's a couple of real exclusives.
Yes, that's right.
That came out through this. What I will say to people, just there is kind of, this was recorded in the tap room while there was brewing going on behind us, and so there is a little bit of background noise from time to time. Hopefully that doesn't distract from people's enjoyment of the interview.
Yeah, we have tweaked up Bruce's audio, so you get to hear him loud and clear. So we apologize for our own audio a little bit not so good, but I think it's a fascinating interview, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, we'll start by going on to Untapped, Bruce, and reading out some names of Urbanaut beers. Of course, there's the famous jam donut, There's the raspberry Lamington. There is the I've got a strawberry hazy, a hokey hazy. What else have we got here? A Tangelo, coconut, pineapple. It just goes on and on and on. Toasted Marshmallow hazy, of course, is probably the most famous one. The question is kind of why. See, no, I mean, in some ways it's a purist's nightmare, isn't it? These kind of beers. There are certain people we know in the industry. Hello, Kieran. Who would just go, it's crazy. But there's obviously plenty of evidence that it works for you.
Absolutely. A great way to start. It's a very kind of Urbanaut stamped its name recently on these beer styles. It started when we were going to an event. I think it was an early Beervana, and we thought, what could we do that's different, unique, that will probably freak people out, gross them out, and we'll get feedback, and at least we tried it. 2 weeks later, all the kegs are gone. Feedback from the taproom is people are coming in and ordering one, be like, wow, it does taste like toasted marshmallow. And then they'll sit down and have 5 of them, which is not the norm that you'd expect from people that experiment with craft beer. Once the can sold out, we started getting more requests. So we're like, okay, well, it's weird, it's worked, let's do another batch. We can make money off it. That's great.
Yep.
That was 3 years ago. That beer is now core range. Has been core range for about 2 years.
Okay.
Unintentional. But we realized there's a market there that wants it. And so then once that worked, we thought, what else could we do? And so we're quite a creative and also diverse NPD team. So we take different people from different parts of the business, and no idea is a bad idea, and we put them on the table. And as a brewer, it's really fun to emulate these flavors. And okay, what we're going to do for a malt base to get something like cheesecake. What are the hops we're going to use? Do we want hops to be really present? Do we want to pull flavors from the hops that will contribute to the flavor? And then how are we going to get it to taste like a raspberry Lamington? How's the coconut going to come? Where will we use the raspberry? So as a brewer, it's really fun and also nerve-wracking because a lot can go wrong. And the feedback, even if you make it good, can be, like you say, not received well from the beer industry.
Are there going to be people who, I guess, hate it just for the sake of hating it?
Accurate. Yeah. But for us, we look at it and it's like it sells well, and people get really excited about it. And even daily in the tap room, when people are sampling something off the tap, and you can see their face light up when they're like, "Wow, it does taste like salted caramel." And so for us, it keeps super exciting.
Is it a generational thing? I know when I've been in here, there are a lot of younger people younger than me. Are they younger drinkers that are embracing this, or does it span the whole category of Urbanaut customers?
It's definitely not generational. You can't pick someone that will like that beer, because often at beer festivals, they'll be like, I go up to Kitty, go to the Brew of Islands. We always take something and it has a marshmallow form in it, whether it's marshmallow stout or pink marshmallow hazy. And you'll get a local that you kind of wonder if they've had craft beer before, and then you're like, I'll give you this just to have a taste, see what you think. And then they'll come back and buy 3 of them for their mates. And so you can't pick it, male, female, gender, it doesn't vary. So yeah, it's been a real phenomenon that works for us, and we love it because people get excited about it.
One of the things that I've noticed, there's quite a lot of New Zealand craft brewers doing brew flavors and stuff in things, but probably more in sours and pastry stouts, that kind of thing. The interesting thing I think that for me from Urbanaut is a lot of the hazy IPAs with those flavors. What kind of true you're that?
It kind of made sense for the flavors that we're looking to emulate. So a hazy base is going to be sweet. It's going to be containing adjuncts, oats and wheat, and we can use other toasted grains. And So it kind of was a simple base to start with. You don't have the bitterness to combat to get through to these sweet flavors. And so it was a great base for it. Hazies are quite popular through the taproom anyway. And so if someone's already tried a hazy, it won't be a big step to try a hazy that tastes like passion fruit cheesecake. So it's kind of like if you took a lager base, you've got all sorts of challenges to deal with. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like sours are typically the realm of fruit.
Yeah.
But
Get that different balance with the acid sweet thing going on with the sour. I'm curious about the hops. Are there certain hops that work with these? Like I'm thinking, obviously, Sabro is going to be one, maybe Strata. Do you find yourself varying in certain directions with the hops?
definitely, like for our core range beers, it's mostly US and New Zealand. And New Zealand hops don't really work in these beers. There's too much going on. Maybe a little bit of motueka for a lemon and lime.
Yeah.
But we'll look at a lot of European varieties.
Okay.
And a couple of Aussie as well. So it's definitely still a beer that we create as the hops and malt are selected to get these flavors out. And Sabro's been used a couple of times. It gets that sweet coconut going on.
Yeah. I wonder how, just for you, this transition, because I don't want to say classically trained brewing, but your background in the UK, you would have never gone anywhere near something like this. Well, they weren't invented, but, with Fuller's straight down the line on the beer, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And from my time at Fuller's, I fell in love with cask ale and was dreading the day of moving back to New Zealand and not having access to it. There's a few breweries that were around at the time doing a great job of it, but that's what I was passionate about. I was at Meantime for 4 years, and they were pioneers in craft beer, but it was still very traditional styles in craft beer, and they were extreme at the time because they were the first craft brewer in the UK to go 100% keg and bottle. Prior to that, all the craft brewers did cask and bottle, and then they said, no, we're going to go keg only. And there was an uproar within the camera community, and Meantime was kicked out of venues and all sorts. So that was like, so then I thought, okay, well, I can come back to New Zealand, start a brewery, and all we're going to make is 5 beers, and they're going to be traditional European styles. And Luke White often will remind me about this because it's what I told him in the early days. Yeah. We're just going to hone those styles and people are going to love it. And so then after about a year and a half, we started doing special releases, and we found the more we branched out, the more people liked it, and the harder it was at the time to push just a classic craft lager, a red IPA, a Kingston Pilsner that has remained throughout.
Yeah, and the Brixton Pale Ale.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, you get that on handful around various places, which maybe, I don't know, the visage when we first brewed it, or did you?
Yeah, it was the very second beer that I brewed on the brew kit, and it's still got crystal malt in it. It's hard to find. It's quite malty, and then the hops are quite subdued for what a New Zealand Pale Ale might be. And it's the beer that I think is closest to the traditional style as of any of the beers that we make. It's the beer that's got us the most gold medals, and it's my favourite beer. But I've got a sad story to tell you. I'm just going to grab something. So as of Thursday last week, we did our last ever Brixton canning run, and this is the last can off the line. I made sure I grabbed it because it's my favourite.
Yeah.
But just because you're the head brewer doesn't mean that you get to keep making your favourite beer style. So unfortunately, our core range has got bigger and bigger, and the Brixton has been the one that has not has sold less and less. So it goes really well in handful format, but the cans are less popular. We stopped doing 6-packs a year ago, and then now with the launch of some of our newer products, namely low carb or light malt IPAs, they go like that, and Brixton goes that way. So yeah, it was a sad day.
Yeah, very sad. You'll have to frame that, put it on the wall.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know, Martin, if you had the Terpene beer
Yeah, I've had a couple of them. Again, there's been a few people trying to make the and so I find it certainly for the drinker, it's trying to get that balance. Sometimes they come the quite from it. What are you aiming for?
Well, the whole concept for us to start doing terpene beers, we were actually approached by Medleaf, which is a company that imports medicinal marijuana, medicinal cannabis, and through prescriptions sell it to people that need it for medical reasons. He approached us and said, look, there's a thing happening in the States where people are making terpenes that are emulating the cannabis strains that they would sell through pharmacies. Would we be interested in trying some? And so we'd sort of heard about terpene beers at the time, but we thought, yeah, great. So then he actually got some terpenes made that matched the strains that people would be buying in New Zealand. So our first one was called Sour Apple, and that's one that people have access to. When the terpene arrived, we were like, wow, that smells like what you'd imagine the Sour Apple smells like.
Yeah.
And so then we've been working in collaboration with them. And so the concept was to create a beer that is using a terpene, which contains no cannabis at all. It's basically derived from plant materials to emulate and in a terpene form.
Yep.
And then to use it in a beer that then does smell like cannabis is just a bit of fun for us. So
yeah.
The malt base will use a bit maltier than usual for an IPA, and then we'll select hops that should match what the cannabis strain is.
Yeah, because hops have terpenes in them. They're related to cannabis. I always see it. It's almost like when you have you want to test malts and beers, and you have a spike and you put in an exaggerated flavour of diacetyl or oxidation, whatever. It's like the terpenes are like spiking the hop characters and really elevating them, and it's like, okay, this is kind of what's in hops, but they're a lot more subdued, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we've found that it works well if we choose the right hop combination in the beer beforehand. And it can be a challenge as well, because often the beer on its own without the terpene tastes so good. You could just release it as that, but then to make it even more interesting, we put this terpene in.
I think I always think of like a music analogy, an audio analogy. To me, it's like we are fiddling with the graphic equalizer. You just nudging up.
Yeah, I love it.
Like the mid-range, or you're finding a couple of sliders to pick up and just see how that fits. I mean, I think it's an interesting concept. I think some of those beers it does take it to another level.
Yeah, some people just want exaggerated flavour, no matter what. It's whether it's a toasted marshmallow beer or a terpene beer, or it's just there's a certain audience that I just like.
Yeah, and the terpene beers that we do definitely deliver that. You see people take a sip and they really think about it, what's going on, and you'll be confronted, and then you're like, what is the flavour? Do I like it? And you'll think throughout the whole beer, and the beer that we could have presented them without the terpene in, it would be like, oh, that's a nice IPA, and then carry on with the conversation.
Yeah.
So
have you ever thought of doing that kind of side by side?
We actually, there's a Beervana idea right there. That would be really good.
Yeah.
Nice.
What is the base there? I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Certainly, I always think of those as it's just that real educational opportunity to they got to learn about how they do.
Yeah. On the other side, you mentioned low carb, and I did want to briefly say we might reference blenders later on if we remember, because there was another crazy idea that you guys had, but you really embrace low carb, which is at the whole different end of the spectrum for toasted marshmallow, raspberry, Lamington, Terpene. This is stripping back a beer to an extent, but you've got think 3 or 4 now that are regular. The Copacabana, Miami, Beach Street.
Yep, correct.
Yep.
And now a new one that we've just launched this week.
Oh.
So perfect timing.
Yeah.
So it's called SoCal. It's in Southern California, and it's a hazy pale ale. And so we've loved making what started as brute beers for us.
Yeah.
Before low carb was really a thing, we were making a brute lager and a brute IPA for the sake of stripping out the sugar to get more flavor from the hops and to be able to have less in the way of tasting the hop. And then as low carb came along, we got them tested and they were very, very low in sugar and carbs. And so we thought, well, we might as well put low carb on, and then the sales went like that.
Yeah.
So then we thought, let's do a hazy IPA, and that's Beach Street.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how it would work out because a hazy should be sweet, and you should have that residual sugar there. But somehow through the process of making it a brute, it has a residual sweetness flavor without the sugar there. So that still works in a hazy. Then we thought, let's do a pale ale version. A lot of our beers are below 5%. Our biggest sellers, I'd say 5 out of 6 are 5% or below.
Yep.
And that's a part of the market we enjoy being in. We do the crazy stuff around the edges, but below 5%, good drinking beers, and our low carb works well. So we launched in SoCal. As we did with Atlanta, our bright IPA last year, we're offering a competition to win a trip to Anaheim. So we like to put a bit of noise behind it.
I mean, the trip to Atlanta associated with Atlanta Bright IPA, at the time, it felt like this is the big brewery kind of thing, not a small-ish craft brewery. How do you make that work?
So previously, and kind of still, we have a marketing budget of 3 figures. And so then when we were launching this new product in quite a crowded market, and there's lots of interesting stuff happening and lots of great beer out there, what could we do that kind of links to the Urbanaut's values? And so since the beginning, we've always made beers that celebrate cities and suburbs around the world that we would love to visit ourselves, or there's no way I can get around them now with the amount of beers we've released. And so we've always thought it would be really cool to be able to relate back to Brixton, for example, and offer a trip for someone to get there or linked with someone local there.
Yeah.
So then with releasing Atlanta, we thought maybe now's the time to do that and to give a bit of awareness to the beer, but also offer what is a kind of traditional of the bigger breweries. So we've partnered with tourism groups on the ground, so both in Atlanta and now in Anaheim in Southern California, where they are excited to bring people over, get a bit of noise behind their Auckland-based office, and so they fund parts of the trip. So it makes it affordable for us to be able to put some money behind it.
Yeah, that's actually a beer drinkers travel bucket list. Would be to get all the Urbanaut beers on, and say I've been to both places.
That would be a heck of a trip.
It really would. Yeah, there's some beautiful spots on there. And have you ever been to Toasted Marshmallow before?
No. Was the jam going up here called Springfield?
It was, yes. Yeah.
If anyone doesn't get that reference, don't worry.
Yep.
You really should. But you talked a little bit about the process coming up with all the ideas for some of those. Are there any that you've tried and gone, actually really well, that didn't work?
Where the batch itself didn't work? Or the name,
Or the idea, I guess.
The idea. We've had one that we didn't release. The rest we've been actually really happy with. One we did keg only to put through the tap room to see the interest in it. And then we're like, okay, people do like it, let's can it. So yeah, it's a real risk. And as brewers, it makes you know that you kind of have one shot at it. We typically brew all our seasonals to 2,500 litres, so that's the equivalent of 50 kegs. And so it has to work, otherwise you won't sell them.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of bench trials before we brew the beer. And then because we've done so many now, we have a lot of a history of if we add this to the beer at this stage, this is going to be the result. So we're getting quite confident in our processes and timings.
Yeah, it's a matter also of coming up with, because people are still going to make the initial purchase of what are the ingredients that you're putting in there. And now obviously it's hard to say no to a toasted marshmallow or a raspberry Lamington. I mean, coming up with the flavour combo to start with that's going to be appealing to a lot of people and stuff. I don't know, if you did a persimmon, some might not work if people go, really like persimmons. So,
yeah.
What even does a persimmon taste like?
so all persimmon.
Yeah, exactly that. We do a first press series where we release a beer that aligns with fruit from the season at the time. And there's certain parts of the year where you struggle to get anything that's too interesting. It seems to be, they're all hazy IPAs. If it's got a berry in it, it's less interesting. If it's citrus-based, it's an easy sell.
Okay.
We do small batches of it because we don't want to overcommit, and some of them will sell out in 2x, and some of them are after 8 weeks, what are we going to do with these cans?
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's interesting you talk about citrus still being that it works because it's a traditional beer, citrus for hops, have citrus flavors. Do people sort of maybe fall back to reliable kind of lemony lime grapefruit characteristics?
It's safe, and even if it's part of the flavor that you put in, then people feel like they can trust it. So what was an example of one we did? We did an elderflower blended with something else, and that was a bit too far from most people. So like for us, it was like, oh, but it tastes delicious.
Yeah.
But maybe the awareness of the elderflower fruit wasn't enough, or or as a fruit.
But, fruit beers are on trend, and to an extent you're a little bit ahead of that curve. Does it mean that now you are like literally, what else can we do? Like people want more of these. Like when you run out of ideas,
well, yeah, we need more fruit varieties to be invented. That's for sure. I guess we have often started partnering different fruits together because we've been doing fruited beers for, I'd say, 3 years now. Oh, last year or even the year before that, we did a mixed 6-pack of 6 different fruited hazies, and that sold really well. And I think we've definitely been at the forefront of creating those beers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does get challenging sometimes, and you kind of look back on what you've done, and that one worked. Let's add a twist to it. So a twist of lemon, probably. And it's safely.
Probably actually a good point that the blender concept, because that is very important. But that was something that I've never seen anybody else do. The idea of here are 2 cans stuck together. You can drink them separately. You can mix them up. What led to that?
Yeah, so, I saw, this is about 5 or 6 years ago, Karma Drinks used to do Karma Cola in a little squat can that's the same diameter as the classic 330. And then I thought, no one's done a beer in that, so let's see if we can get our hands on some. So we found some in Melbourne in the Busy plant.
Yeah.
Took about 6 months to get them over. And then we released our Miami, at that time, Brut Lager as a small can of lager that was 1 unit per can. And we did them in an 8-pack. And then I was sitting in the office one day and I was playing with them. And then I was like, what if we did a twin pack of Miami? Is there any way to do that? And then we thought, what if we had 2 different beers in that pack? And so you could have 2 of the core range beers. And then that led to, what if they were designed to go together? And then we literally got so excited in the office. We were like bouncing ideas off. Within about a half-hour chat, we went from a single can of Miami to we're going to change the world with the way that people create new experiments with beer.
Yeah. And it lasted for a while. Was it just that it too complicated, too hard to do here, ideas? What was the demise of it, I guess?
Probably COVID. It was the start of it. So it works well if you can do big batches.
Yep.
And so China used to take a lot. And so we'd do sort of would make big batches of it, send some to Australia. We're in Coles supermarket with it, and then half of a container would go to China, and so it made it easy to do. It justified bringing the cans over from Australia, and then during COVID, Australia and China were like, we're not going to be importing beer for a wee while. And then when we came back after COVID, the plant in Melbourne had stopped making that can. So I know I dropped some sad news with Brixton, but I've got some good news with the blender series. So just 2 days ago, we received our first samples from China. So we found a factory in China that can make them. And so we'll be running those through the can line tomorrow. And then just testing that they have the same tolerances as our the cans we were using, getting all the food certification from the factory, making sure that it's all up to spec, and then we'll be bringing in pallets of that with the plan to have some rolling in around August, maybe around an event in August, we'll see, which has been exciting for the team because after probably 3 years longer of not doing blenders, we're bringing it back. So we've got a long list after our last NPD meeting where we sat down and talked about all the different flavours we could do that sort of work separately, but ideally work together.
Brilliant. The podcast just had all the news. This is, you talk a bit here first, yes. Better rush this episode. You talk about your NPD team. For people who are not familiar with that new product development, and there are a lot of young people in your business and a lot of young women.
Yes.
Where does that help with the idea generate? And I'm not saying that you guys that founded the business aren't the most creative, because you are, but obviously having younger people feed in with ideas works.
Oh, absolutely. As brewers, you know what you can do, and you know what has been done, and you know what you like personally. And when you get people from different backgrounds and different ages, and even people that might not necessarily drink beer, they will bring to the table ideas from their experiences, and they'll be like, what about if we did get a Manuka smoked meaty flavour and pair it up with some New Zealand herbs, and maybe from a food background. And so there's no bad ideas, and no one ever gets laughed at for suggesting an idea. It all gets put down, and then we sit down and we'll go through the list and see what excites people the most, and then make a collective decision. And then it's on me and Dave and Jim to work out how we can make it. So we usually agree to the concept and then kick ourselves for agreeing to the concept, like this is actually going to be really impossible or difficult. So it's giving people the ability to feel confident to raise ideas, and then for us to sort of find ways to follow through, which makes it really exciting to be at work to do that.
Martin had a question related to, you mentioned Dave being Dave Hutt, your head brewer. Is that right?
Yeah, brewery manager. Yeah, I make the final decision, so I'm just holding on to that head brewer role.
But Martin, in preparation for this chat, he's talking about Dave and his love of saison, and he's one of the best brewers of saison in the country, we think. But he doesn't get to make them here.
Yes, yeah. It has raised every single NPD meeting. And so we've jokingly talked about like toasted marshmallow saison.
Yes.
Like he would if he gets to make saison and we put toasted marshmallow in, we won't make that. That's sacrilege. But it's we've done a few, and we had a couple that were slow sellers, and maybe it's the Urbanaut fans that don't. We've gone so far down one channel that the saison, when it pops up, doesn't resonate. We recently did a collab with St. Leonard's and brewed a saison called Saison de Hoof, and so we got to have kegs in the taproom.
Yeah.
But what has been quite remarkable about Dave's approach is that when we first sat down, when he'd started with the business, and he knew we were making some fairly strange beers at that point, or non-traditional, and we first, I can't remember what the beer would, maybe it was Jam Donut, and I was interested to see Dave's reaction to it, because hazies aren't his chosen beer style to drink or make. And then also making something that should taste like a sweet artificial jam donut. And straight after the meeting, he came to me with ideas about how we're going to emulate the kind of raspberry center and what would glazing taste like in a beer, and how do we get the coconut in? And so he's approached it as a challenge for a brewer to, jump out of the traditional form and then into something that gets to use more kind of creative thought to get the flavor through. But at the same time, the core range is really dialed in, like our American style IPA Detroit. That's where he gets to sort of flex his traditional skills on the brew kit.
I think that's a really big thing to say, is that it's that, yes, you probably have a reputation that's around some of the more wacky flavor combination. But it's underpinned, and it has to be to work. It's underpinned by a solid base of quality around actually make good beer. The flavor and the creativity and stuff has to have a foundation that is what works so well. And I don't think it's. I'd love to see more saisons. I'd love to see more saisons get out, but unfortunately, I don't think it's a Urbanaut set. I mean, it's drinkers out there with such issue. Save off their hard sell for anybody. Yeah. I'm very sad about that, but I could get over it.
Yeah. I think before we wrap up, we're trying to keep these little dispatches reasonably tight.
Mm-hmm.
I did wonder, sort of sitting here, and it's a beautiful location. You've got it's light, airy, the paints are fantastic right here. They've taken up more and more space as the years have gone on. But for people that maybe don't know Kingsland, or people that do know Kingsland, how important has this location been to the evolution of what Urbanaut has become? Like, can you separate out what you're doing from where you are?
Yes, it's nice to reflect on that. When we were looking for a location for, it wasn't called Urbanaut at that time, for a brewery that I was starting with two friends, we were looking around the outskirts of central Auckland, and I was recently back from the UK, so I was learning Auckland as well. And the vibe that Kingsland gave at the time, it was not so much craft beer. I think there was only really 605 that was serving craft beer, and then you go all the way up to Galbraith, and that was sort of it. And we found the building. It's not ideal from a production point of view. We're split over 2 floors. All the floors had to be reinforced so that can support the weight of the tanks. The stud's not very high, so all our tanks are designed specifically to be a certain height. And it had stuff kind of going against it from a production point of view. But then we got excited about what's happening in the neighborhood, and it is very much a neighborhood where people will go out in their local area, and it's quite diverse, and we realized it seemed really ripe for a craft brewery. So now we're turning 8 on Saturday.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like we've been around for 2 years. Sometimes it feels like we've been around for 12. It just depends on what's happening that day.
Yeah.
The beer mile is kind of growing up around.
Yes, which we're thrilled about. So every time someone says they're opening something beer related in the area, we're like, great. The more people here doing things with craft beer, the more people will seek us out as a destination, and rising tide and all that. So, we've never looked back, and we're so happy that we're here. We will always stay here, and we are going to squeeze in a couple more fermenters in a couple of months up here. That's one of my challenges.
Okay. That bring the capacity to?
We could do around probably 900,000 litres a year. We need more tanks downstairs, and the big bottleneck would be storing finished goods. So that's what we were talking about yesterday, is we can move the finished goods out to another site and then add more tanks in. So
And that, from everything that I've kind of gathered over the years, that 800, 900,000 litre mark might be a sort of a sweet spot that we could sit quite happily in. Is that your take on?
that's what we think Urbanaut would suit our beers and where we're heading. Yeah, so it's a good size, and it's all we could do out of the site as well. And we like having a small team and a small site, and the tap room as part of the production side of the business and brewery tours. And so, yeah, it's for me personally, it creates a really fun work experience. And
Yeah.
so,
We haven't even touched on Urbanaut, but I was told reliably by Simon, I think, that sometimes wait time for a burger here can be maybe up to an hour because they are so popular.
yes,
People know that they're going to wait, like they're not disappointed. They come in, order their burger, have a couple of beers. Is that still the case? Is it still going on?
it absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny for me because we expanded our tap room, and part of the requirements for consent was to put in a substantial food kitchen. So we looked around pizzas, and then we're like, definitely burgers. And we always thought it would be to be able to serve pints of beer. We would have burgers here. And then we got an amazing chef, and quickly the burgers got so popular that people were coming in asking, is this where Urbanaut is? Not knowing anything about that there was a brewery here. They're looking around at the tanks wondering, where's the burgers? And then people coming in for burgers, not beer. So it's created a bit of a hype around that Urbanaut brand. It used to be an hour-long wait. We've now put in more grills and invested in the kitchen so that we can turn it around faster. But if there's an Eden Park game day, we're a 10-minute walk away. And so a lot of people will come here before they go. And on those days, it's like hectic food, beers. And thankfully, it's created its own following. So people probably find Urbanaut beers through the Urbanaut experience. So
It's great. Brilliant. Yeah.
awesome.
Well, thank you, Bruce. That was a really entertaining romp through everything Urbanaut, and I don't even think we touched everything. But,
Correct.
we got the beer essential. Brilliant. Sad to hear about Brixton's demise. But yeah, I'm sure there's going to be many more great creative experiences coming out.
And I'll always push it back as a seasonal at some point. I'll better throw my weight around enough, hopefully, so bring it back.
Brilliant.
And here's to 8 years.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the chat today. It's been really interesting and fun to chat, and I'm looking forward to the series. It's going to be super cool.
Thank you. All right.
Well, that was, I think, fascinating. I love Urbanaut. I love what they do. I'm really sad that Brixton Pale Ale is going to disappear. Especially loved having that on hand pull. I really did like that beer. And kind of cool that the blenders are going to make a comeback. So they're a fun thing.
They are.
Everyone's
They're a talking point. Hey, they're the sort of thing that I think they're great with friends. To get a couple of people and you can play around with it. I think that's beer should be fun. Beer should be enjoyable. Beer should help you to have a good time with your friends. So that works well.
Yeah, and I know you're a big fan of the beer they brought out for the SMI for the 8th birthday.
The Aruba,
Aruba,
which is the second beer to be launched in the 500ml cans after 8 Wired's Tall Boy IPA, which is just as an aside is one of my beers of the year so far.
Oh, wow!
So we'll come back to that in a future episode. But but no, that Aruba lager was awesome for a 4% ish.
4%.
Straight down the line lager, huge amount of flavor.
Great texture, I thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a great way to celebrate 8 years. Which, time marches on.
I can remember going into that Urbanaut brewery when there was nothing there.
Right.
And it just seems like yesterday, meeting Bruce, Thomas and Simon for the first time. And all their hopes and dreams. And it's fair to say where they are now is not where they intended when they set out. It's phenomenal how kind of from their original core range, I think maybe now only the Kingsland Pilsner is left.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the red IPA is kind of comes back occasionally. I've seen it occasionally.
Yeah. But I will just put a little rejoinder on the Tall Boy Aruba 500ml can. That's craft breweries doing that.
Yes.
Yes, because and for people that are interested in that, the 500ml cans, we're getting off topic here, but it was because it's only since Recorp has come into business in the can business that smaller breweries have been able to get the 500ml cans, because previously they were basically priced out of it by having to order, I think it was a minimum of 250,000 of them. So there are mainstream breweries in 500ml cans and bigger, but for craft breweries, it's a new thing, but I think we're going to see more of it. So, yeah.
I've heard rumors.
Yes. All right. Hey, that's us for another week. I think, who knows when we'll be back. We're trying to keep this as regular as possible, but we've got some conversation lined up with Ryan MacArthur from Beervana. I think that'll be next cab off the rank, and you're off to see the very good people at Brave Brewing.
Absolutely. I'm taking a roadie down to Hastings to have a chat with Matt. His wife Gemma. I'm really looking forward to that. And
so am I.
Drinking some tiger milk while I'm down there.
Yeah, lovely. So again, what is it? Subscribe, like, share, give us your feedback. We always want to know what you're thinking, any ideas, and again, we apologize for the little dodginess in the sound quality there, but we're
learning. Hopefully it gets better over time.
Yes, hopefully. All right. Hey, good night. Good luck.
Thanks, folks.